Well, good morning, multitudes. Good morning. What? Pairs? Is it a multitude that's listening to us and watching us, Pat, or is it just
Oh,
a couple
multitude.
of bedraggled people? Huh?
Yeah. No, hey, Jude, somebody came on to me the other day and it says, your audience is without question the people who are interested in politics and influencers. I was thinking, Jesus, that's giving them a lot of credit.
And also, of course, they're interested in people with a bit of crack in them. There's enough
Uh,
bloody
uh,
doer faces around the world to keep
uh.
us going for
By the
an
way,
eternity.
Dr. Collins, this morning, all the kids in the Republic are getting their leaving cert results.
Is that right?
My
Yeah.
granddaughter, thank God, she's going to do art at the art of the College of Design or whatever is the College of Art in Belfast.
Oh, very
So she
good.
got whatever she got there. She in fact she got a hell of a lot more. She's obviously takes her brains from the other side of the family, not from mine. But she's done very well. But I was thinking, Jude, my exam results when I did my leaving cert were so pathetic, and they were beyond dismal. My mother and father thought I was going to spend my life with a pick and shovel. But anyway, it's if there's any young people, well, I don't suppose there's a while of them watching us. But hey, what I'm basically saying, and to the parents, hey, someone leaving cert or A levels are not the determinant factor in your life. There's a lot more you can do to change it.
Well,
So
for sure.
that's my good deed for the day done
Oh,
as
thanks
regards
be
to
to
kids.
God, because well, I got my when I got to the A levels, I don't need to do three subjects then. And I remember such a relief dumping all the subjects that I failed and failed and failed again, like
You couldn't do
Irish,
that in the public, Jude.
Latin, geometry,
I
science.
spent my time. In fact, I would consider it a waste of time struggling to do Irish and maths, which I was abysmal at. Had they left me English, economics, French, and history, I am certain I would have got four A's. And I'm not even being arrogant there. But Jude, I was spending 2 hours struggling to pass maths. No,
Uh,
it
uh,
was just a waste of my
yeah,
time. I was
yeah.
never going to be a rocket scientist.
It's really sort of stupid. Maths is despised or very hard for a lot of people. I used to find the English graduates that came to the PGCE, many of them would have struggled to get their maths. And I said, you got to have maths and English. You must have at least a
Uh,
C if you're to be
uh,
considered. And really, some of them used to worry an awful lot about it. I think there's
uh,
ways people find as cast, but at the same time, if they're good enough teachers, you should be
uh,
able to excite you enough that you'll be interested. That's the key, you know. All the rest is garbage. You know,
uh,
interest the people that you're teaching in the subject. And my God, we're
uh,
just finished talking about all the wonders of the world before we came on air. And
yeah.
it shouldn't be on the wit of a good maths teacher to talk about maths and show people examples of it in action in the world to excite them in a way. When you think,
Jude, my youngest son wasn't all that great. No, he wasn't bad, but he wasn't that great in maths. But when he got to third level, he got this lecture, and he suddenly, well, I would say, he excelled at maths. And he said there was a lecture. He said the lecture made a lecturer made everything simple. He
yeah.
explained everything, and he explained the concept. Joe, Jude, if if someone says there's two plus two, that makes four. But if somebody gets you two bits of something and two bits of something, and you can count up and make four, like suddenly the concept's not that difficult.
Isn't that the truth? Isn't that the truth?
Uh, uh,
Meanwhile, they make, I still don't know what the X stood for,
Hi,
X
X
plus
plus Y
Y
equals Z.
plus Z.
I couldn't give a shit whether
I
it
mean,
equaled
could you
whatever.
make it less attractive for kids?
Uh,
If you
uh,
spent time, could you spend it, make
uh,
it less attractive? Anyway, those are all
let's
little
move on.
all the
Uh,
little twigs and straws of life. You want to talk about the British political landscape, which you have an inkling is about to change radically.
because I spent 25 years at the Derry Journal dealing with, the politicians there who were part of
Yeah.
the British system. Hume was going over and back to Westminster. Martin McGuinness was down the road at where was he, Mid Ulster or whatever. You were dealing with, and there and so many British politicians, Secretary of State used to come to the Journal, and we used to meet them all. So
Yeah.
as a Southerner, I became really fascinated by the thing. But here's what I met Jeremy Corbyn a couple of times, and so on,
It was in your
and
house
I was,
because I
it was in my
saw
house,
him.
yeah,
Remember that?
yeah, yeah. But here's the thing. This last while, I think I grew up in a council house in Kenny. I would have been belonged to my people would have come off the land and would have been the first generation to move into a town. And I have this affinity with people who are at the bottom of society, the grassroots, not the top people. And this last while, I've been sitting watching the Labour Party, and I'm saying they belong to the ruling class, Starmer's ruling class. Starmer does not speak for any shape or form for the factory worker, the what do you call it, the car worker, or the miner, or any. He belongs to the suit, Sir Keir Starmer. And his attitude, by the way, I'll cut the chase here. His attitude, particularly towards Gaza, I think it's beyond despicable. So here, last night I read this thing, and as you copped onto it too, there's a new survey done by Ipsos, and already, what is the amongst the voters 16 to 34, the figure drawn to the left, Green Alliance, which is what they said if it went ahead, would be 52%, which is more than half. But a new poll on one of by the British pollsters finds that 20% of British adults say they're very or fairly likely to vote for the new left-wing party founded by Jeremy Corbyn.
which
And
hasn't even got a
if
name yet.
it hasn't even got a name yet, and if the new left-wing party forms a pact with the Green Party, that figure rises to 31%. And when you bear in mind that Labour got a massive landslide with 33%, dude, these figures are right. There's a landslide coming in political opinion and political change in Britain if Corbyn gets it right.
That's right. Hey, now, before I move on to that, I want to just make a point. You were saying that you were reared in a council house in Letterkenny. I was reared in Oma in the lap of luxury. It was a virtual palace. But like Tony Benn, who gave him an equally distinguished background, that doesn't mean I'm not on the side of the worker. And I am delighted. I am beyond delight, Pat. I really mean this
Yeah,
about that new party that they're forming. And I hope to God they don't fall out. I hope to God, because the left's famous for that. Um,
yeah,
but the very idea, I mean, if there was any logic in the world, if people were voting with their eyes open, there'd be no question about it that Jeremy Corbyn and this, what's her name, Sultana, would be
uh,
voted in this party that they've created. Do you remember the time um, Jeremy Corbyn was led around by Tom Watson on
yeah,
TV? And it was like a political prisoner or something being led. And
yeah,
Watson was full of arrogance, and
yeah,
Corbyn was full of meekness almost, I thought. And
yeah,
I was saying, I felt like shouting at the screen, hit him a dig, hit him a dig.
yeah,
All these lies, that the sustained passage of lies about anti-Semitism and Jeremy
yeah.
Corbyn are absolutely outrageous. And yet they persuaded enough people in the so-called Labour Party to kick him out. Um, and then when you come to what is the Labour Party doing now? Well, first of all,
So
it's
Stanford, Jude.
breaking all the bloody promises it made when it was voted in a year ago with such a majority. But above all, it is supplying weapons or parts of weapons for Israel. And that's unforgivable, I
And by
think.
the way, Jude, there have been more denial of freedom of information requests in this last month about the role of the British Labour Party or the British government in regard to Israel. Apparently, it's not been proven, but it probably will be when all this is over, that British planes are flying sorties over Gaza, spotting for Israel and feeding back intelligence to Israel. They're denying it now, but I think it's the national newspaper in Scotland said they have sources that despite the Britain's claiming it is no. Now, I'm not exactly sure what they're saying, but they're basically saying Britain's denying it's got a role in what's going on in Gaza, and the national newspaper saying this is not true. There's evidence that Britain is actively involved.
Sure, we know perfectly well there was parts of weapons and full weapons that were being fed by the British. Incidentally, one of the most sickening sights I've seen is Starmer now saying, we really should call a halt to this assault on
Aye,
Gaza. Two
yeah,
years after it's been going
yeah,
started. Oh
yeah.
God. It's unspeakable.
But
Unspeakable.
in September in 2022, I think it was, Al Jazeera did an investigation, and they covered a lot of this thing about anti-Semitism, and they said without question that the documents, they had covert recordings, and they analyzed massive levels of social media, and said there was within the internal Labour Party, and I presume we're talking about the right wing Friends of Israel group. They
Yeah.
worked. absolutely actively, not passively, actively against Corbyn to ensure he would not be elected prime minister. And there was a lot of disinformation said by the Labour Party. Dude, in other words, the right wing, the Blairite faction, or whatever like they call it, the guys that wear the suits all the time, dude, they do not reflect what a lot of the working class who live paycheck to paycheck. These guys hang around the corridors of power with the multi-billionaires and the oligarchs and the senior judges and all these people, the old colonels, and so they do not reflect the working lives of people.
Yeah, but you see, the thing is, I agree with what you're saying, but the thing is, you've got to change that situation with a totally new party. And
Yeah,
we've seen so many parties that have gone so far and then they don't quite make the last lap. I'll tell you what I'm thinking about at the moment. I'm thinking about the Scottish National Party that really
yeah.
sort of fell apart. I'm thinking actually about, not to the same extent, obviously, but Sinn Féin. I mean, Sinn Féin was riding so high in the polls for about 3 years. And I remember saying to you that having a high place in the polls is not today. You still have to have it the day people go into the voting booth, and
Yeah,
it
yeah.
didn't. It didn't translate into the voting booth fully at all. I worry. Do you really believe that this new party is going to replace the Tory party?
No,
Or
no,
not the Tory
not
party, but
yet,
the
Jude.
Labour
No,
Party.
no,
Labour.
I don't believe any party though, Jude. They have to nail it down. They have to have policies that strike a chord with people.
And don't
They
you
have
think they
to be
will?
sort of intelligent. They have to do things properly. I think their people are so sick and tired. In fact, disillusioned with Labour.
Yeah.
When you see Starmer, standing with Netanyahu and all the rest of it,
Uh,
and Tony Blair being the godfather of one of Rupert Murdoch's sons.
yeah.
That
Yeah.
Labour Party does not represent me,
Yes, all the more
or
reason,
people like
Pat.
me in Britain.
But
Say
all the
again.
more reason why another party should replace them. And my question to you is, do you think that this party is going to destroy the Labour Party and replace it?
I would sincerely hope it does, Jude. I really
Uh,
genuinely, because I don't think the difference it's between. Jude, remember the old joke about Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael? What was the difference between them? A cigarette paper. Labour. I can see no difference between Labour under Starmer and what do you call it, Conservatives under Rishi Sunak. When he was in government, absolutely none. There's zero. I can. If you can tell me five big differences between, or even four, or even one, go for it, Jude.
well, if you think about it, Pat, see this new party that Corbyn and Sultana are trying to put together.
Yeah.
Their enemy, if the polls are right, will not be the Labour Party or the Tories. It'll be
Be
Reform.
reform. Yeah.
Reform. And you see, here's the way I would think. The British people are very cautious, and
Yeah.
if they're told often enough that Nigel Farage and his party is a terrible danger, uh, and they've got to keep them out. A lot of them will not want to vote for the Tories because the Tories made such a bags of things when they were in office.
Yeah.
So they'll vote for Labour. You might say, well, why don't they vote for this new party? Well, that's a step too far. At least I
Yeah,
know Labour and they've been around for decades. And, I think there's a caution within the British psyche that might make
Jude,
it,
they're conservative with a small c.
yeah,
I've met a lot of English people in my life, and Jude, they're always. Years ago, I was chatting, this before in trouble. I remember one of the managing directors, the Murray, was totally pro-Israel and all the rest of it. He thought all the Gazans were all terrorists. He was totally pro the right wing in Britain. He
yeah,
believed in the old sort of colonels and the judges and all that sort of society. they
yeah.
they, yeah, they look up to their, any society it holds the queen, and that sort of, there's a layer above us, there's a neck, that sort of thing. They in British society, they look, the royal family. Dude, I have no time for the whole concept of one family being superior to the rest of us. For fuck's sake, it's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous.
Well, I totally agree with you. But Pat, we have, well, there's two things. One is in the state in which you live, in the free state in which you live.
Excuse me,
Uh,
it's the Republic of Ireland, Dr. Collins. The Free State
well,
disappeared. But anyway, I'll let you
well,
go on that.
as long as we're agreed, it's just a state. Okay. But we have any number of people in the South are really, really interested in the royal family. They'll
I
bust a
know that.
leg to get reading about them, what's
Yeah,
happening
but it's
next.
like watching Dynasty. It's like watching Dynasty or whatever they call it, or Dallas on TV. It's about a sort of life, they are the people going around in a golden carriage, and they're
Uh,
people bowing and scraping to them. It's like something out of a 15th century fairy story, and I like
well,
it's Jude, it's I can see this sort of fascination in it. But
Well, Pat, I agree with you. I mean, I think, frankly, the idea of a monarchy, to my mind, is nuts, absolutely
it's
nuts.
absolutely
But
nuts.
Lee, that's what people want to do. But if we've got to look at our own situation or your situation in the South, uh, we have a president. All right, that president is elected. Mind you, it's not elected by me, although I'm Irish too, and he's going to be the president
Yeah,
of Ireland. But uh, the fact is, he will be put, or she will be put into a massive place, Aras, 99 rooms or something like that.
yeah,
I think that's plain crazy. I also think it's almost a slap in the face for the public, where there's any number of people, thousands of people, sleeping in the streets or sleeping in hotel rooms, which with a family of maybe five or six. Uh, there's something about people that wants to give privilege to people who aren't necessarily giving back everything to them. People talk about Michael D. Higgins working very hard. Now, I quite admire Higgins, and I'm always confident that if he appears in public, he'll not make an idiot of himself. He's got a very
yeah, yeah,
eloquent tongue, and he's very learned. But at
yeah.
the same time, he's an old
Sort of
man
bubble, is
like
that right?
myself, and it was just him and his wife, and they've got this bloody mansion, huge, almost bigger than the mansion I was reared in.
Yeah.
And
Well, hold on, Jude. Remember the Bishop Farn and Derry?
yes,
He used
yes,
to. He always used to run around on it.
It was known affectionately as Wee Bums.
Wee bums, wee bums. He used to have a chauffeur-driven car, a big saloon car, and somebody said to him, "Hey, half the people in the Derry diocese are living below the breadline and all the rest of it. What in under God are you running around in a car for?" He says, "When I go up to the Unionists and the other places, he says my status has to be on a par with theirs. That I want to show them that we are no sort of depressed people type thing." And I think my our friend Michael D. When you're elected, that was wasn't that the old Viceroy's residence in the Phoenix Park?
I think so, yeah.
That's yeah. So he inherited that. He didn't build it, and the Irish government didn't build it. They inherited it from the Brits. So it's a symbol of the first citizen. Now I got to admit, I can't dispute or sort of have any moral argument about what you're saying when people are sitting in the streets and here a man and his wife and two dogs are living in a 99 room mansion. But having said that, no, maybe if we were starting from a greenfield site tomorrow morning, we wouldn't build a 99 room mansion for the president.
Well, you see, I think this springs from, I'm not sure about your thing about Wee Bums, Dr. Farn,
Well,
and
I know I was actually told that by somebody who knew him.
it didn't make much impression on them when I went to see them because
But that whatever it was,
gerrymander and discrimination ramped its
yeah,
way on decade
mhm,
after decade. But
yeah,
I don't know that he wouldn't have played much part. But even we take, say, President Higgins and is playing a part. We still could change. It wouldn't be a big deal. You could find a fine house. You could build a fine house where somebody would want to live in some degree of not luxury, but certainly comfort,
yeah.
and given all sorts of respect. It doesn't have to be that big brute of a house. Would you tell me, this, Pat? Would you like to live in that, Narson Nugthra?
Jesus Christ, not at all. Dude,
No, I
oh,
hate
no,
it. I hate it.
I would hate it. Like, dude, I live in a fairly big house. We once had kids running around here now. There's only
Yeah,
two of us now. And like I don't like the sound of silence. And like
uh,
living in a house with 99 rooms, Jesus, give us a break.
that's right. You see, it's very horrible, and so it's for all sorts of reasons. It's not a good idea. Incidentally, that thing about the church and big house and chauffeur-driven car and all.
Yeah.
I remember talking to a priest who had moved to a parish in the Derry diocese actually, and I moved into quite a large, rather grand house, and it wasn't the most prosperous of villages, but his house was quite grandiose. And I remember saying, oh, geez, that's a bit, or maybe I didn't say it, maybe I just looked it. And he said, this was built before I came here. And
uh,
that's what they put me into. And I see that's the way that they move, the attitude and sort of mood of the Catholic people would have been. We have priests, we have bishops, and look, we're able to put them in just as big as grand a place and as stylish a lifestyle
Dude,
as your
it
lot.
was symbolism. It was symbolism,
Yes, yes,
not
exactly.
political power.
Aye, aye. And in a way, it's sort of daft. Anyway,
Yeah.
I call on people to change not just the president, but to change the presidency's residence, the president's residence. Anyway, there was live line, I gather. I missed it, Pat, but I saw a write up of it. And they were, I think maybe it was, yeah, it was Fin O'Toole wrote up the live line program and what it was like because they were discussing presidential people and people were phoning in with different names. So I'll call out a number of names here and you can tell me what you think. The top one that Fintan O'Toole lists is, now he's not in favour of these people, but he lists Bob Geldof, who the guy who rang in described as being known globally for his past humane endeavours. What do you think? What score do you give him?
The emphasis on the word past, because he and his friend Bono, I think, are despicable. I'm using the word despicable, but hey, Jude, I've sat and watched. Let me reiterate or give another iteration. I've watched what's happening in Gaza, and I realize there's a lot of fake out there, a lot of pseudo people. When it was safety had out about poverty and all the rest of it. But hey, who's going to take on APAC and the Jewish lobby and maybe get cancelled in Hollywood, maybe get cancelled at big thing? Bono and Geldof haven't said a word as far as I can see for about 18 months. Now, there's some sort of leakage from them this last couple of weeks or so on. But for 18 months, while the Israelis were bombing the shit out of people that didn't have an army, a navy, or an air force and had no defense, daily massacres, 2.3 million being denied food, water, medicines, children getting operations done without anesthetic. Nothing, not a word. And what he called, and now suddenly it's like Starmer coming out. Oh, we have to stop Israel. It's what they're doing is so
Uh,
bad. And as somebody said to on social media yesterday, when this is all over, everybody will have been against genocide. Well,
uh,
Jude, I
uh,
think I have zero time for Bob Geldof and Bono
uh,
because they were safe. They played the game. The Bono and Geldof would have been seen with sure Thatcher, Sir Bob Geldof. Bono was in and out of the
Lord
White
Bono.
House, but he had. Look, Jude, anyone with a conscience knows what Israel is doing.
Mm,
That's absolutely immoral. But these guys have played the game,
mm.
and they can play the game as much as they like. But I and my heart know that they're fake, and I
Okay.
really believe that. I am 100% certain.
Well,
Jude,
I
they
think
have never.
but I think they're a bit hard there. They did do good deeds, some good deeds
Oh, in the
at one
past,
point in
yeah.
their life, but as a
Jude, I'm just
result, their silence on all these things is all the more shattering. You know.
absolutely. Jude, I'm not, let me get this clear. What Geldof and Bono done in the past, I am, but what I'm saying, that was at the time at no cost to themselves. When it
Mhm.
would be a cost themselves politically, now
Yeah.
they have said nothing.
Okay, here's a few other names that were suggested. Johnny Logan was suggested as a candidate, a charismatic individual who looks well and has represented Ireland well in the past and is known around Europe. What about Johnny Logan?
A bit of a lightweight. Jude. He wrote one song. Come
A
on, for
bit of a
fuck's sake.
lightweight.
But
Jeez.
and by the way, apparently he's a very nice fella
I'm sure
and
he
all the
is,
rest of it.
but I don't like him
Yeah,
very much.
yeah,
I don't
but
like a lot of
Jude,
him.
but hey, no, like he's not John Hume. You
Oh,
know.
he's not John Hume, that's for sure. Jim Gavin, the ex-manager of Dublin. The man who,
Jim
as you
Gavin,
say here, it says he saved the endangered species called the inside forward.
no, he did a brilliant job at Dublin as the manager. Like he's a top pilot as well. He's a very
Oh, is
intelligent
he? I
man.
didn't know that. No.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think he's now some sort of senior figure in the Irish aviation. He was a pilot, and
Mm.
apparently a very experienced and
Uh,
good one.
would you vote for him?
He's a man of some gravitas. Yeah,
Mm.
you know, he's very intelligent, very articulate.
Would you vote for him?
No, I vote for Diarmaid Ferriter.
Ferder. Ferder was another one was mentioned. Several others were mentioned, but Ferder.
Uh,
Why would you vote for Ferder?
every time I listen to Ferriter, uh, I learn something. And the man he can make history come alive in a way that few others have. When even he talks social history and how he's a bit of a polyglot. He seems to understand the whole concept of society and about culture and about civilization and history. And in other words, and every time I sit down and listen to him, I think, Jesus, that man, I admire him. And he's got
Mm.
gravitas, he's got the learning, he's got the ability. And you said earlier on about Michael D. If he was our president, when he would go somewhere, he'd be saying he's not going to let us down.
Exactly. Well, there's a couple of other names that were mentioned. Simon Coveney, for example. Yes,
What do
no.
you think of Simon Coveney, Jude?
Well, I think well, I think he's come a long way. I kind of like him. There's a slight flavor or perfume of the privileged classes clinging to him, but only a small,
Yeah,
scent of it. Sound decent enough guy, but I wouldn't be breaking a leg to have him there. But there was two other names were mentioned. One was, in fact, two other names were mentioned, and both of these were guests of honor at book launches I had. So I would love to see either of these two made president. I could then say, see me, I can get the president of Ireland to
they're
come.
friends of mine. Yeah,
Frances Black, who I think is a very good woman, a really,
yeah.
really good woman. In
Yeah,
2018,
she
she
is.
was pushing for the Occupied Territories Bill. 2018.
Nah. And here
And
we are 7 years
if
later.
they'd passed it and acted on it, history could have been different, but they
Yeah.
didn't. Frances
Uh,
Black, a very modest woman, as she said herself, many people forget themselves and call her Mary because her
uh,
sister's more famous looking and more glamorous and has got probably a better voice. Frances has a humility, and I just really have a great regard for her. And the last one was Rose Kennedy Walsh, who also
yeah.
launched a book of mine. And the reason is that she was at the time a senator, but the main reason was she was from Mayo. My wife's from
Uh,
Mayo. So I was told
uh,
at gunpoint to get her, and I got her.
uh.
Would you?
She's a TD now, isn't she?
She is, she is. Well, you know
Yeah.
what she looks like, and you've heard her speak.
Yeah.
What do you
Yeah.
think?
Yeah. She's got everything going for her. That woman's a
Hmm.
very good looking woman, very articulate, and a very nice way with her.
Hmm. So you see, Ireland has got some plonkers who might be
Yeah.
foisted on us, and the mind boggles like Conor McGregor.
Oh, Jesus.
And there was somebody else, I think, I can't remember now. But some of the most ludicrous names have been mentioned. But I really hope they finally get round to it and settle on one quickly so we can sort of get our shoulder to the wheel and point out who's good and who's bad. We're just down to 4 minutes now, Pat. No, we're not. 4 minutes. What else do you want to talk about?
But Jude, I think the Queen's University want to reopen their body
Oh,
donation.
yeah,
Jesus,
yeah, yeah.
hang on, Jude. Sounds like Burke and Hare. Where the boys
No,
used to go around.
no, no. They're not
Shut up,
Birkin
Jude.
here.
That's it.
Birkin.
Uh, when the boys went through Australia or something, none of the boys that got done for went round when you buried a body. They went
uh,
round and then dug up the bodies and brought them to was it Edinburgh?
to the hospital, I guess, and sold them
Yeah,
because
sold the bodies.
that was
I think both of
plenty
them
of.
were hanged eventually for their
That's
crimes.
right. It's a bit unfair, really, because they weren't doing any harm to anybody except the dead body, and they were using the dead body for a respectable purpose. Whereas there's a lot of people who go around
Hey,
making
Jim,
life
come on.
miserable for a living.
I back up a respectable purpose. They were digging up bodies hardly cold in their graves. Imagine if
Ah,
your wife or your son had been buried, and these
ah,
they weren't. Hey, it wasn't altruism they were doing it for. They were
well,
doing it
no,
for
it
the
was for
money.
money. But what happened to bodies after they? Why did they dig them up? Where did they take them to?
For medical science, they said. Yeah,
Exactly, exactly. Once a body's dead, it's just a body. So I'd be all in favour. And Queen's University is reopening its body donation program now. So I won't have to dig you up, Pat, and bring you. You'll have to
I
consent
thought
to
it
it
was a wee
first.
bit. What's that word? Not grotesque. What's that word, Jude, where someone said, "Oh, Jesus, I
Macabre.
don't really want." Huh?
Macabre? No.
Yeah, that's the word, macabre. That's the word. I couldn't remember the word there. Jesus.
It's
Suddenly,
all right. How
here's a
do
body.
see when you're in your coffin after about say 6 months, you're not going to look all
Uh,
that pretty. So wouldn't it be good that your body would be used for a useful purpose when you're dead? When you're dead, you
uh,
don't need it anymore. You just
Yeah.
don't need it, you
Funny,
know.
I was watching a program years ago on BBC. I think it was a woman left, and apparently they sliced her up with bits. But I was thinking, gee, but then she said she wanted medical science. She had some condition, so it was somebody famous, dude. But there's no point in me trying to say I remember who it was. But she left her body to science. Somebody really famous, like a senior poet or a well-known poet or somebody like that, or painter. I can't remember.
Well, do you know that one of the things, this thing about implants, dental
Yeah,
implants now? Well, to do that, people have to have very sturdy gums. And in
yeah,
some cases, they're not sturdy enough, but it can be remedied if they can get some sort of substance from other bodies.
yeah.
And when Alistair cooked, does that ring a bell for you? Alistair
Yes,
Cook,
yes.
writer from
The
America.
letter from America.
Brilliant series, brilliant, really stunningly good. And he did a good series on TV about America as well. Well,
Hmm.
when he died at a very advanced age, I think in the late 90s, in his late
Yeah,
90s,
great 90s.
his body was stolen. And it was all people believe almost certainly for its worth in terms of extracting this substance that can then be injected or built up or whatever inside
Yeah.
people's gums so they're capable of implants. And I was
Yeah.
thinking, God, I thought, oh, what an awful end for such an eloquent, wise, man. I'm
Man.
sure he could have been an awful creep, in fact, but he was very good. Here, we're out of time, Pat. Last minute. Say something wise, say something funny. Stand in your head or,
Jude, I'm going to tell everybody, look up Gavin Newsom's trolling of Trump.
oh,
It is
yes.
that is beyond funny. And by the way, he's holding up a mirror finally to the Trumpers. This is what your man's been doing for years. Look
Yeah.
how fucking stupid it is.
Okay, Pat, that's your good deed for the day.